Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, I mean, a little bit unrelated, but something I wanted to bring up is, we kind of started off by talking about the fact that almost anyone can build almost anything now. And
Yeah.
when when you have that happening where people are vibe coding so much stuff, I feel like my background with N8N helped a ton because I can understand, even though I'm
Yeah.
not reading the code, I understand what it's doing. And I understand what could potentially go wrong when I deploy this maybe Python script on modal, for example. And I can think about those edge cases. But people who are just kind of describing their idea and they're brainstorming and then they get something that works, they're generating essentially dark code. They have no idea what's in there. Only the AI really does. And especially if you start to get, really technical where you have multiple people working on the same code base and nobody's really reading it but their AIs,
Mm.
you know, what happens when all of this stuff is shipped into production and then it's just not vetted correctly. So it's like the question I'm trying to ask you is, I'm sure that you're building a lot of stuff that is based of code, and then you're probably not reading every line and checking it. But what do you do to make sure? What is your QA process essentially of like
Mm.
the metrics you need to hit in order to say, okay, we're going to roll out this phase, or we're going to push this to the prod environment? Like, what kind of are the check boxes that you need to hit?
Mm. It's such a reoccurring question, which is like, how do you actually get it into production? I mean, the key of it is when you do your scope document and you have your different phases and modules, to have a like an actual like success criteria checklist, and not
Mm-hmm.
just one that Claude generated, but one that you as the project manager or the engineer understands like what this actually means. Like, oh, success is when it generates this document, it's properly formatted, whatever. But you know what the right thing actually is supposed to look like at the end. And a lot of times when you're working with clients, it's hard because you're not the industry expert, and so you can't necessarily verify the output sometimes. But like it unfortunately, but yet fortunately, requires like a deep understanding of like the thing that you're trying to build from an architectural systems perspective and the individual success criteria, what that is supposed to look like. And like that's fundamentally what it is. So when it goes through the pipeline and it's like all green checks on the success criteria, and you have your project manager actually look at it, sometimes you got to kick it back because it's like, okay, yeah, Claude said success, but it was missing a bunch of parameters in the JSON payload when it sent it to the LLM. So the LLM was missing some of the context, and so like the output, although like correct on your 100 tests runs, um, it will be incorrect on 1,000. Because the margin of error is just going to increase over time. Like the standard deviation, where the margin of error is like, okay, at 100, like maybe you got one or two wrong, but at 1,000 you have 10x, you got 20 wrong. Well, 20 wrong is actually like a really big deal for the business, because when this is live, it's actually going to be doing 10,000, per unit. And at that point, it's 200 wrong. And if 200 are wrong, the business is going to collapse, right? And so it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, this like test on 100 was like, okay, yeah, we won. It was within the margin of error 1%. Yeah, but that's at a volume of 1,000. And why was that 1% there? Oh, because we can't just chalk that up to hallucinations or LLMs or non-deterministic black boxes. Like, oh, there's only so much we can do. Actually checking like, okay, hey, look, there's this input data, this JSON that I'm looking at here is missing a couple parameters that we need. Potentially, like this metadata might not be important for most of it. Maybe the LLM can kind of like fill in the gaps for a lot of it and like figure it out and still get a right answer at the end. But the reality is like this metadata should be important, and we don't want the LLM to guess, right? Because at scale, it's going to fuck up. So that's just like a small example of like it does take the knowledge and the know-how to verify these things. Now, eventually, the things will be able to verify themselves and make fewer mistakes, yes, but without a deep understanding of the eval and test criteria, like success criteria, you're just not even gonna know until it's in production and at scale where those holes are, right?